right? So you're already innately a Ferrari, all right? But right now we got a bunch of engine gunk. There's been a rat that built a nest in your engine. The parking brake is stuck in the on position, and you're clunking down the highway at like 32 miles an hour, and you got some smoke coming out of the damn thing, and you're wondering what the fuck's happening. Well, the problem isn't you need to add more turbochargers. The problem is we got to get rid of the engine gunk and let the Ferrari be a Ferrari.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Blue Collar Boardroom. I've got a special guest, John Whiting. Inside this episode, you're going to learn how you're actually drunk. And a lot of blue collar entrepreneurs are actually holding themselves back. It's the mindset, it's the habits, it's the beliefs. And we're going to go get inside of the subconscious and really unleash your CEO superpowers. Doesn't matter if you're a roofing sales rep, contracting sales pro, solar sales pro. Look, my man John here is a digital marketing expert. He spent millions of dollars advertising on Facebook, scaled a digital marketing company, exited it for 7 figures plus. Now he's coaching entrepreneurs. 600 people or more have attested to a way in which he can achieve superpowers for a CEO. And it's his discipline, it's his organization, and it's about some of the habits that really he's helped me with that I want to share with you. And I want to say, man, thank you, John, for coming to the Blue Collar Boardroom. His business, Bulletproof Entrepreneur, you can find it at bulletproofontrepreneur.co.
Yeah.
All right, man. So where are you from, bro?
Hey, originally from Detroit, Michigan. By the way, thanks for having me, dude. It's been great getting to know you over the last couple weeks, and I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, we met at a friend of mine, Jeremy Haynes' digital marketing mastermind, and I love being a part of these different communities, a community of digital marketers. And I saw this guy, and I was immediately impressed. Jeremy is a guy who has worked with some of the biggest influencers. He says, Lee, this guy's doing something, and I need you to talk with him. And so that's why we got you here in front of the roofers. The contractors, they're a lot of times they're held back by a lot of things. Most of them say they don't have enough time.
Yeah. Ultimately, your question, how do I get more time?
How do you get more time? How do you get more energy? How do you quit fucking up? I think that's really what a lot of them want to know. I think they know how to do it a lot of times, but something about me always telling them how to do it has still got them rolling their eyes at me a little bit. Yeah. So maybe unlock maybe what's not connecting there.
Yeah, so, and you have heard me do this, but we'll role play on this. So, Lee, do you make better decisions drunk or sober?
I make better decisions drunk. No,
I knew you were going to fuck with me on this one right out of the gate.
No, but sober, you're right.
Right.
Really drunk, I would say, yeah.
Right, you're blacked out drunk, probably not making the best decisions,
you're right.
How about when you're like really frustrated or angry or really afraid or
now that's
worried,
where I make terrible decisions.
Right, and so you make better decisions when you're calm and poised and confident, right? So when you're in one of those fearful, doubtful, frustrated states, it's kind of like being mentally drunk, right?
Yep.
Right, so you're asking, how do I get more time? How do I grow my business? How do I make more money? How do I have more leverage so I can have the freedom that I want to have? But if I gave you the best how-to blueprint in the entire world and you're blackout, hammered drunk, are you going to be able to do anything with it?
Fuck no.
No. Why?
Because I'm drunk as fuck.
Because you're drunk as fuck. So everybody's asking how to do things while they're blackout drunk. And they're getting instruction on how to do shit without sobering up first.
I can attest to roofers loving to get blackout drunk. I can also attest to roofers being completely sober and just this glaze goes over their eyes when I say certain things.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens is there's different things in the mechanics of our mind that I won't get too high level on this, but ultimately it's these imbalanced perceptions that we have. We see things as super only bad, or oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. And when we're in one of those extreme polar opposite states, it's like being mentally drunk. So if we sit, for example, we lose a deal that we think we should have closed, right? We go, oh man, that's bad, right? And it's an imbalanced perception of it's overly weighted to the negative. Fair? Mm-hmm. Right? But if we have an infatuation, for example, with, oh man, we're going to do X amount of millions of dollars next month. We have to. Oh my God, great. It's only going to be positive. It's only going to be great. Well, you've heard about all the stories of people putting their life savings into Dogecoin and AMC and shit because it was only good and no bad, only positive and no negative. And that, I use the analogy, it was like being mentally coked up. Right? So too much of that's going to fuck you up too. And so there's a happy medium here that what we do is we take entrepreneurs through a process to essentially balance out their mind, just like when we were in math class. Remember, not to go too high level on you guys, but remember in math class, when one side of the equation equals the other side of the equation, you get to cancel them out, and all that's left is zero. Well, what happens is once the equation's balanced, it basically disappears. But if it's imbalanced, it stays there, and it's big and heavy and complicated. Just like causing this mental drunkenness. So we have all these perceptions that are big and heavy and complicated that cause all these thoughts, right? And so what do? How do we get rid of those? Well, you're asking how to get rid of them using, let's say, I'm sure a lot of you guys have said, okay, I'm going to do some affirmations, try more habits, do the best routine possible, follow this blueprint, do the 5 a.m. green drink, whatever the fuck, right?
Superpowers.
All this stuff, right? That you're told to add on. But if I add on stuff and you're hammered, now you're just going to be a guy slurring his affirmations in the mirror in the morning. Right? So is that really the solution? To slur affirmations harder?
No, I love that analogy.
Right. So what we got to do...
An affirmation that doesn't have the right feeling attached to it is canceling it out.
And now you're just lying to yourself, right? So I'm sure if you guys have tried affirmations or meditation or whatever, and you're just like, oh, this doesn't feel right. It's because you're mentally drunk trying to do it, right? And that's why you're not getting the results. So what we do is we take entrepreneurs through a systematic process where we essentially balance out the mind so that all of these imbalanced perceptions that are causing this mental drunkenness balance out and this disappears.
Now we're to the meat and potatoes of this, because I know that in order to get to this point, you had to have a rock bottom, a mental breaking point. Can you share that mental breaking point so I can kind of, as an entrepreneur, where you're in charge of a lot of people, or you had a moment in time where you had to, when all it came crashing down?
So for me, it was back in 2011, actually. I played golf in college, ended up dropping out and pursuing professional golf. And for those of you who don't know, professional golf is like, imagine... in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, anything less than the Forbes list, you're basically homeless. Okay. That's pretty much how professional golf works. So there's about 20,000 guys that are competing for 100 spots on the planet to survive as a professional golfer. All right. I thought I could do it. Got really good. Ended up surviving 2.5 years. Basically any tour that's not the PGA Tour, it's kind of like organized gambling. So you're basically, everybody's throwing money in a pot and it's an organized gamble basically. And I survived
Sounds
2.5
like
years. Dude, it makes entrepreneurship a complete cakewalk. But I reached this point to where, like, since I was a ranked junior golfer and like just put everything into golf since I was like 12 to 22, 10 years of my life, just like, this is what I'm gonna do. And just got to a point to where I shot 6 under par, missed a cut, shooting 6 under par. And I'm like, I don't know how much better I can get. And I missed the fucking cut. Got no paycheck and basically had to pay all my expenses. I'm just like, I was out of money. I was operating out of a sponsor's bank account. I didn't even have my own bank account at that time. And because I dropped out of college, like my family was like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, well, fuck you. So I just basically did it anyway and had no idea what I was doing. And so I just got to this point where I had like $70 in cash in my wallet, was basically staying in a spare room of this quote unquote sponsor's condo. And I got to the point where I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like my self-belief outside of the golf world was literally non-existent. So I'm like, well, either I'm going to get a job at like Subway, miraculously get better at golf tomorrow, or like, why am I even on this planet? Kill myself. And it was a pretty dark moment.
I mean, I've had those thoughts.
I was very close. And so instead of doing that, in fact, a couple of the greatest words that were ever spoken to me is this particular guy. I said, I see it as I have these 3 options. What the fuck should I do? Like, they all suck. And he's like, well, whatever you decide to do, I'm sure will be the right decision for yourself, basically. And I was like, okay, all right, well, whatever, I guess. That makes sense. Like, how could you know? I don't know. And so that's what caused me to start searching for different ways of thinking and doing things. And I started doing all the traditional personal development shit. I jumped in with 2 feet into like literally everything that you've probably ever heard of in personal development.
What year was that?
2011.
Okay, cool.
And so I traveled around the country, scraping together what I could to go to seminars and networking and
it's
whatever.
Just like you see the certain guys that are new to it, they just catch the bug. They go from seminar to seminar.
Dude.
And I love to see sometimes, because you wonder, are these guys just retreads that'll never get it?
Yeah.
You know? But it's great to see them get it. I had a badass that spoke on my stage that kind of reminds me of that story, but go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the first ones I went to, I met a dude who I was like, all right, find a mentor and stand on the shoulders of giants, and I'm going to work for him and crush and whatever. And so did that, found out his company was a complete piece of shit, and then left and did the same thing again and did the same thing again. And literally like every 8 months, I like moved to a new state because there was this new shiny new opportunity. One of them, in fact, was selling energy efficient home improvements door to door.
Nice. Door to door.
Yep.
Give me your best door to door pitch.
I don't even have one at this point.
Mine
Was basically, I think this was in Southern California, and I think it was like some sort of a government grant type of a thing.
Yeah,
where like,
you had 0% interest.
Right.
No matter your tax score.
Yeah. It was that
new
whole
windows,
thing.
new roof.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yep. And so I knocked a whole short side story. I think when I moved out to there to work for this dude, and he had people crushing it. I knocked, I think in the first 6 months, it was about 60,000 doors.
Holy shit.
Yep, I went for it. Now, all the leads that I generated, I found out way too late. I was still naive at this point. And about 4 years into my entrepreneurial sales hustle journey, still not making jack shit. Like literally like
But
12 grand a year.
You're happier.
I was alive. I wouldn't even say I was happier at this point. I was just more confused. And like, I'm like, well, I'm doing all the affirmations and I'm working harder and I'm doing the think and grow rich and all this stuff. But I'm like, I still suck and I don't know why. But I ended up finding out in this particular company that the confirmer that was supposed to take the leads and like actually set them actually had quit like a month and a half prior.
Oh no.
And so all these leads that I was generating, this confirmer specifically that I was assigned to, like had quit, and like I didn't know enough. I was super naive at the time to even debug the damn thing, and I was just like, well, that sucks. So I literally made $1,800 for that whole time.
Damn it.
Yeah, damn it is right. So I went through all of these different
you chose digital marketing over door to door.
Basically.
How'd you become a digital marketer?
Yeah, so in 2015, I got introduced to a couple of different people that I ended up kind of quasi working with, but that led me into, I've always been relatively tech savvy and whatnot. So I bought Ty Lopez's SMMA thing, as did everybody else in 2015 or 16.
Jerry was in that program.
Yeah, I know.
Claim to fame.
Yep. And so I had gone through, and I was kind of helping out on this other. It was a relatively larger tech development type of a thing, and I was just the do what you can guy. And I went through, and I was just trying to add as much value as possible, just consuming, digital marketing courses and like trying to add it to this business and like hope for the best, And one thing led to another with that company, kind of didn't work out. And I was just sitting there going like, well, I guess I'll start an agency. I don't know. I know how to do a bunch of stuff, and started floundering around with that for probably 6-8 months. And in that process, I got introduced to this dude who basically, picture Yoda, right? Like little old guy that, like not in the public eye in the swamp, from Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty much this dude. And I started sharing with him. I'm like, dude, I've done every damn thing, like literally studied everything, and I still suck. And I'm still like confused and unhappy. Like, what the fuck? And he's like, well, let me share with you maybe a little bit of a different. He's like a private Yoda for like a lot of high end, a lot of multimillionaires and a few billionaires.
Nice.
And I think there's only about 10 families that he works with, and he's not on social media, and he prefers to remain in the
anonymous.
Swamp. Yeah. So I just kind of serendipitously got like this random introduction to this dude, and I'm just like, what you just shared with me was basically his own version of the drunk sober analogy. I've kind of dumbed it down for my purposes, but I'm like, that makes fucking sense.
Yeah.
I'm drunk as fuck. So how do I sober up? How do I get rid of this shit? Whatever it is, I'll do it. I don't give a fuck. And so I basically, with this dude, like everything that I had earned, which was pretty much nothing, I paid to him. I was basically staying as a
Concubine.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't at his house, but I was in this shit apartment in LA, is where this dude was based out of. And I drive to his house.
Demonic, satanic ritual?
No.
I'm just kidding.
No. But at that time, I probably would have done just about anything.
That's hilarious.
But no, I ended up, I actually did I planted trees at this dude.
Mr.
At this
Miyagi
dude's
got
house.
on
It was
fucking
very
wax
much,
on, wax off.
It was very much like that.
I love it.
And, so ultimately, I ended up working with him for about a year and a half, and it was the best thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And coming out of that work that I did with him, I went from honestly never making more than about 18 grand in a year to building a multiple seven-figure agency. We had 400 clients. We had a team of 23, and I exited it in 18 months. And then I took about 8 months off, and I was like, all right, well, now what do I want to really do with my life? I've sold the courses on how to build an agency and generate leads and close deals, and platforms change every 5 minutes. And I'm just like, I don't really want to teach that anymore. It's just it's not the best that I got to bring to the party. And I had never really shared what I went through in this work that I did with this dude. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how can I take that and make it into a scalable business, right? And it's stuff that's not mainstream. It's not taught very many places. And I sat down for a few months and just sat out by my pool and tried to design how I could make this scalable. And that was in spring 2020. And last fall, I launched it. I filled up all of our beta spots in about a week. And since then, it's pretty much been a slow and steady, nice progression to about $1.5 million in the first year. And more importantly than that, I know I was sharing with you our little case study. On average, our clients experience a 47% decrease in fear. We measure it all, by the way. It's all measurable and trackable. And 82% increase in focus. And on average, our clients, just by removing shit from the mind using our system, a 78% increase in income.
That's great because most roofing contractors rely on Marlboro Lights, cocaine, and Adderall for that.
Yep.
But it really brings an important point to me because, I've struggled with ADD my whole life. I've been drunk for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, as a young guy, drunk because I didn't have a purpose. Didn't know my direction. Didn't understand how to be a good human being as a single man. Just kind of lost in culture.
Yeah.
Growing up though, as a guy that started as a roofing salesman, then became a roofing manager, but then had to become a roofing CEO. It's redefining yourself that's so hard.
Yeah.
And so I was at a dinner at Ed Milet's house, and I sat next down to Dr. Joe Dispenza. I didn't have any idea who he is. Have you read his book, Becoming Superhuman?
Yep. I told you, I've been through everything.
Okay, so
yeah.
How does what you're talking about kind of relate with Dr. Dispenza and some of his becoming superhuman or CEO superpowers? Can you kind of get down to a little bit more specifics of how that works?
Yeah. So, and I'll try and keep it relatively kindergarten because this can go quantum physics level.
Let's go there. Let's start kindergarten, then go quantum.
Yeah. So there's a couple different precursors that I want to kind of lay out just so we're all on the same page. First of all, there's the model that at least I teach is, and again, what I'm about to go through, disclaimer, what's true for you is true. So anything that I go through is just what's made sense to me and what's made sense for the people that we've taken through this process, but it also could and does directly conflict with some religious and philosophical beliefs. So my intention is not to say, this is true. What's true for you is true. If what you're doing is working, great. I just want to lay that disclaimer out there.
It's a great disclaimer.
So ultimately, think about it this way. And we were talking about your purpose and direction. So you can sober up, and another analogy that I use is kind of like you're already a Ferrari innately. When I speak, ultimately I go, how many of you guys know you have the next level within you, and you're just trying to get it out? Everybody's hand goes up. They already know they got it in them, right? Everybody knows innately, I've got it, right? So you're already innately a Ferrari. All right. But right now we got a bunch of engine gunk. There's been a rat that built a nest in your engine. The parking brake is stuck in the on position, and you're clunking down the highway at like 32 miles an hour, and you got some smoke coming out of the damn thing, and you're wondering what the fuck's happening. Well, the problem isn't you need to add more turbochargers. The problem is we got to get rid of the engine gunk and let the Ferrari be a fucking Ferrari. But a Ferrari's not that fun with no place to drive it, is it, Lee?
No.
No, so we got to give it a direction. But if I give it a direction and say someplace nice, if you pulled out, you have an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
If you pulled out your
Someplace
iPhone,
nice.
you don't need to. But you pull out Apple Maps and you type in someplace nice, is it going to know how to navigate there?
No.
No, why?
It's not somewhere specific.
It's not somewhere specific. So it's got to be exactly specific, not even just like Los Angeles or Miami or Naples. It's going to have some exact coordinate before it can give you turn-by-turn directions. And it's not just an exact coordinate we're after, because if that were the case, I could put the 123 Main Street gas station in the middle of bumfuck Iowa. That's an exact location, but do you really want to go there? No. So we got to have a reason for why we're going to this specific destination. So there's all these different factors that play into what's going on here. But what's the point? Are you the car or are you the driver of the car? This body, like you are not a body, is my premise, okay?
Yeah, spiritual being.
So you're an infinite spiritual being. You have a body and you have a mind. Your mind is a collection of mental image pictures that all have these perceptions and charges
Some might
connected.
argue that the only purpose of the body is to, be a vehicle for the mind.
And technically, if you want to actually break down what is the mind is a collection of these mental image pictures that all have an energy or a charge connected to them. And energy being forcing of space between terminals like a battery, positive, negative.
So these images would all come from my past.
Yes, but also they're being created in the present because it's just like a battery, positive, negative terminals. What creates atoms? We have protons and electrons as positive and negative charges that hold literally this physical matter in place. So this physical matter, energy, space, and time all exist within the mind. We're all in one big collective mind. This plays off the concept of Buddhism, all is one, and so on. Have you ever read the book Conversations with God, by the way?
I haven't.
Good book to read. The book one specifically, Conversations with God, written by Neil Donald Walsh. It's a good book. It's not religious at all. Just talks about spiritual concepts. And they do a very, very good job at explaining how they explain actually the Buddhist concept. They just don't use the word Buddhism of we're all part of one collective consciousness. So it's kind of like, here's the collective you consciousness where I'm you, you're me. And then here's the mind. And it's kind of like this intertwined thing. Okay.
You want to take it one step further.
Take it.
We live, your world is created completely through your mind. And so it's not that we have a different conscious. We're working from the same sheet of music. However, you're creating in your own vehicle.
Yeah.
I'm creating in my own vehicle. However many billions of people are all creating in their own world. And so not only are we, so the argument is, are we all a bunch of people, a billion people in one world? Or are we a bunch of people in a billion different worlds? And are we all operating,
The
while
answer is
we're in
both.
different worlds, operating on the same conscience?
Both, right? So it's this paradox thing, right? It's kind of like a paradox of like in entrepreneurship. We're always pursuing perfection, meanwhile, totally understanding that perfection is literally an impossibility.
And when you achieve perfection and you grow, your business breaks.
Right.
Because there's no such thing.
Because there's no, right. So you can't technically achieve perfection, right? So the whole thing is a paradox, right?
Yeah.
And so just like the physical experience is a paradox, right? So I'm you, you're me on one perspective. I'm me alone in an isolated perspective on my own from another perspective. The only difference is how are we looking at it? So ultimately, if I change my perspective, I'm literally changing my place in this thing we call space, right? So if I have this box, like let's say this table, right now, this perspective is causing somebody potentially to be, worried, afraid, frustrated, whatever. Same box, different perspective over here causes that same box to look like, well, this is a world of opportunity. I got this,
I just had
and
a
so
moment.
on.
I had a moment today. They say sometimes fears are genetic. So I called my dad after I got my blood taken today. because I saw him as a kid pass out one time from getting their blood taken. And so I've always, been a little hesitant around needles. When my wife got an epidural, I got lightheaded. But for the most part, I've been cool. But today I had to have multiple things, blood taken out of me. And what happened was I went into a seizure, and it was fear. And essentially the seizure caused me, or there's a name for it. If you Google it, it's like literally your vascular, you actually, it's not just you pass out it's not the same. And I went to a place where I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know who was next to me. It was completely scary. And nothing happened except for my brain. My brain literally caused me to die for a moment. I don't know if I was like, obviously... So, but it felt like that. Yeah. It felt like my being was outside of my body.
Right.
And I did it all from my fucking mind.
Yes.
That's what's the most fucked up about it.
So check this out. So this is okay, we set the stage, but now I'm going to go back to your dispensa thing, right? And this is where I have a fundamental disagreement with pretty much most of what is out there in terms of what's known to be true, in terms of the brain specifically, okay? So, for example, they're saying like cortisol fires, which causes you to feel stressed, right? Your mind is a collection of mental image pictures, not liquids or chemicals, okay? So as a fundamental understanding, there's you, there's your body, there's your mind, okay? Your body exists within your mind as physical matter, right? But your mind exists as its own thing, that part of it is the body. You run both. And sometimes those both run you. So either we're going to be cause over our mind and over our body, or effect to our mind and to our body, right? It's cause or effect. Are we pushing it, or is it pushing us? So when people are talking about specifically dispensa, or anybody who talks about, neurochemistry and so on and so forth, they've been studying neuroscience forever. And they keep studying the physical universe to explain spiritual universe phenomena. And that's why they can't, what is consciousness? What is consciousness? And you can Google this right now. There is dozens of cases of people who have literally like 10% of their brain. Like the rest, they're born with literally like a hollow skull, okay? And they have like 120 IQ, fully functional, without a brain. That exists. You can Google it. It's scientifically a thing. So the question then becomes, is that like science just goes, oh, right? Is because what are you going to study? There's no brain there to study, but the dude's chilling just like he'd be sitting here having a conversation with you and I. So what is it that's really running the show? Is it the brain that's running the show, or is the brain just an effect to the cause of the mind? So when you're talking about genetic talks about the body and the DNA of the physical matter of the universe. The mind itself is a collection of mental image pictures. So you had this event that happened as a kid where you saw a needle, felt a certain way, that stuck in your mind because of a perception, right? It just stuck there. And what happens in the mind is, for example, in this particular thing, black equals microphone equals table equals white equals gut equals Lee equals men equals hairy arms equals beard equals hat. It's all looped in as they are all the same according to the mind. And so what happens is, this is where you get people who have like, they get to like 40, 50 years old, or even 20 years old, doesn't matter the age. You ever met somebody that has like a completely irrational fear of like pickles or fences or some stupid crazy shit, right? It's not because it has nothing to do with the pickle directly. What it has to do with is there's some event that happened in their past that didn't even necessarily include pickles directly. It could have like included the color green or vinegar or something that was kind of similar to a pickle. And so what happens is the mind interprets that as, this is bad, avoid it. And then what happens? Because of the perception in this thing called the mind is what causes the cortisone to trigger in the brain. The cortisone in the brain does not trigger the mind. So it's this opposite effect, right? And so the deal is, it's kind of like, well, do you blame the, like if the driver of the car slams on the brake too hard, right? Because he's drunk, is it the car's fault?
No.
Right. Exactly. So the body's just fine, but there's this mind and this driver of the mind that is driving the car. That's really, it's this opposite of cause. So what's happening, and this is what totally made the difference for me, is once I understood really the underlying mechanics of this all, which when you study it, it's actually quite fascinating. Won't get too deep into it now because without visuals, it's tough. I'm using this. But ultimately, it's kind of like they're studying the car to explain drunk driving.
Yeah.
And I don't care how long you study the fucking car, you're not going to come up with an answer.
I could pretty much stand that every mental illness, that even all circumstance, but specifically anxiety, fear, and for me, you know, I can remember the first time having an anxiety attack. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because you know, now to grow a business, sometimes people hustle, grind, and they get addicted to the cortisol. I got addicted to I'm an adrenaline junkie.
Sure.
And so when your body goes into fight or flight, there is an effect. And, you know, I used to like rejection at the doorstep when people got pissed at me because it would cause me to want to fight and give me energy to go to the next place.
Sure.
So what do you think to say to a contractor that's actually addicted to the adrenaline rush that is also the drunkenness? It's almost like an addiction.
So that adrenaline I would put over on the overly positive aggressive side,
Correct.
like the mentally coked up side.
Mentally
right?
coked up.
Yeah.
I used to love to live in that state.
So there's two ways to get a result.
And that's how I felt like that was my armor. If I could just stay mentally, and a lot of times people are watching this like, Lee, you're on drugs. Lee, there's no way you're that enthusiastic. But, you know, obviously the other side of that everybody doesn't see is, you know, sometimes, you know, I can be sharp, I can be manic, I can be intense. And, you know, it's like, don't let your highs get too high and your lows get too low. And, you know, I probably only started meditating 2 years ago.
Sure.
Do you do meditation?
Not in the
conventional sense. Do you visualize?
We all visualize.
Yeah.
Right. It's
So
just, are you doing it deliberately
you
or
don't
not?
effortlessly take quiet, mindful time?
So when it's funny, the tools and processes that I take my clients through are specifically guided mindful time, if you want to call it that.
Beautiful.
That is basically what we do is we take a full
guide meditation and make them have superpowers.
We make it more logical and practical than that.
So you pretty much hypnotize them to get rich.
No. It's exactly the opposite, actually. Hypnotism actually makes you less conscious.
Okay.
Right? My job is to we all want to be more conscious. Remember, you're the Ferrari, right? So if the Ferrari might be going faster, but if you don't know why it's going faster and you're not in control of it,
yeah, no good.
Is that sustainable? No, right? And so ultimately, like what we take our clients through, for example, just like as if you were going to go to a drug rehab program, what they do is they'd first take they'd take a toxicology report, right? They'd figure out what all is in your system, meth, coke, weed, heroin, whatever, right? And then based on that, they'd create a game plan on how to sober each one of those things up and get them out of the body so that by the end of the allotted period of time, you're sober. Right. So what we do is we have a way of taking what we call a mental toxicology report. And there's all these different things that exist in the mind that we uncover both the conscious and subconscious blocks. Those things that are sitting there that make you go, ah.
So when people come to you, do you make them go through their traumas and their events from children and for their going through their...
We don't make them do anything.
No, but do you encourage them to go through?
So what we do is in our onboarding process, for example, we have a relatively thorough questionnaire. And we just say, be as honest as possible. The more you withhold, the things that make you feel uncomfortable, those are definitely the ones you're going to want to put on there. We don't give a fuck. We've literally heard everything from rapes, murders, everything at this point. We don't give a shit. I don't care. We have a guy like, hey, I jerk off too much and it's distracting. Like, all right, cool, whatever. Just put on the fucking questionnaire. I don't care. Right. And so then we have a series of tools and processes that we go through. We have a process on our back end to where we essentially itemize their rambling of shit. And when we say, all right, you're going to use this tool, to neutralize this item. You're going to use this tool next to neutralize this item, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. And so what happens is, it's kind of like we liken it to like the mind is like this big ball of tangled yarn, right? Picture like in the bottom of grandma's old sewing kit up in the attic, right? At the bottom of this, there's this tangled ball of yarn that's all dusty and fucked up and tangled together with like 150 strings in it, right? Well, what everything else is trying to do, and this is what totally changed the game for me, is, okay, we're going to handle fear of failure. That's one string. Congratulations. You made a slight little bit of, woo, yay, I feel better after doing one something or other
A lot
exercise.
of ones that people don't even talk about is the fear of looking like a blowhard, of being too successful.
And whatever it is, right?
You know?
It doesn't really matter what it is. When you understand that until you untangle the whole ball, it's still going to be there. And they're all interconnected and connected to each other. And so you can handle fear of failure, but also there's probably literally like 50 to 100 other items that are just connected to that have their own anatomy that need to be essentially unwoven. So your question is, how the fuck do you unweave this? Just like you change somebody's perception from I'm not buying a roof from you to I'm buying a roof from you. How do you do that? Sell. How do you sell?
Influence.
And how do you influence?
You persuade.
Ask questions.
Yeah, you ask questions.
If you ask the right questions in the right order, your prospects come to their own conclusion and say, I'm going to buy a roof now. You telling them to buy a roof might persuade some people just because of who you are and your authority and your, all that. But how do you really get somebody to change their mind is you ask them questions and get them to change their own mind. So what we do is we essentially get the right items. We ask the right questions about those right items. And systematically we go through and you logically, literally sell yourself on a new perspective on every single item that we uncover. And so we untangle the whole ball of yarn, and so that you've literally shifted all of these micro perspectives one by one, so the whole perspective changes. Not just focusing on, we're going to fix your fear of failure in a weekend. It's fucking impossible, because it's connected to literally hundreds of other things that have perspectives that are anchored into the shit show that you've created for yourself. Reactively, not causatively. Like, you're not a bad person. It's just that's what your mind does.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you ask the right questions in the right order on anything, you'll be able to shift your perspective.
I tell you, we did this exercise to build trust in one of my company meetings, and we asked, hey, tell us one of the biggest challenges that you overcame as a child, or a struggle that you went through that defined you. Yeah. And sit in a room, and you have a big company, you got 45 people, and listen to everyone's story. And you just don't realize how much trauma people face. And so, do you have a method for dealing with trauma? Or
Of course, it's literally what I just explained.
Nice.
And because it's not, if you can identify the actual, like, and you know this, like when somebody objects in a sales situation, it's not about what they're saying, it's about what they're thinking. You got to handle the objection that they're thinking about, not the one that they're saying. And so you might be aware of, I have this trauma where this happened when I was a kid. Well, if you were aware of what the actual underlying cause of it was, it wouldn't be having a negative effect on you. And so when you ask the right questions in the right order, you begin to see, just like your prospects come to their own conclusion that their objection that they just told you was completely bullshit. You can't just tell them their objection's bullshit. You have to ask them questions to where they have to introspect and be like, oh yeah, you're right. That doesn't make any sense.
One mindset that I see is pretty common around successful salespeople and entrepreneurs is it's a fine balance, just like the paradox. You can be too loose with your money. Sometimes I get these guys that are just like, throw their money in the air, don't care. Yeah. And, sometimes those guys, they don't back it up and they don't do the work. Right. But then you got these guys that they have a hard time in investing into their business. They have a hard time investing into marketing. They work really hard, and they think in terms, they can't help it, of scarcity. They can't help it. Yeah. It's the scarcity versus growth mindset. Yeah. And so, how do you, is there anything that you can give to the contractor that is going into winter that's thinking, I gotta tighten up. I I can't grow during these time periods. What do you have to say to someone that is thinking about contraction because of the elements?
So ultimately, if you're looking at like for just a very kindergarten thing, so let's say you're afraid of going broke, which is why like, oh shit, I gotta hold on tight, right? So if you're afraid of going broke, the definition of that would be $0 in the bank account, right? So given that so there's a couple principles. There's a principle of polarity, which states that everything has poles. There's opposites of everything. So it's hot, cold, success, failure, positive, negative, right? Everything has poles. And there's also the law of conservation of energy that states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed or transferred from one form to another. So that means I can't destroy positive or destroy negative. It just has to transform or transfer in some way. And this is how you handle objections, is you get them to transform their own energy into a different perspective.
And you transfer your confidence.
Right. And so ultimately, if you're looking at, if I'm afraid of having $0 in the bank account, and you're thinking that $0 in the bank account is only a negative experience. It's an experience that is negative. We have to avoid it. Well, since we know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only be transformed or transferred, that means that there must be equal positives in every negative. And so what I would suggest is right now, write out what would be, the more you can list, the better.
The positives.
What would be the benefits
I'm going broke.
Of having $0 in the bank account? And
no bills to pay.
No bills to pay, no taxes, so on and so forth, right? And what you want to look for if you're actually going to do this exercise, which I would recommend, grab a piece of paper.
Clean slate, start from scratch.
Correct. And what would be the benefits of that? So you want to go like sub-benefits of the sub-benefits of the sub-benefits.
Love that.
Okay. And so I would be able to start from scratch. What would be the benefit of that? Well, I'd probably have a new lease on life and probably be more apt to take more risk because I got nothing to lose. Great. What would be the benefits of that? Well, I'd probably make more bold decisions. What would be the benefits of that? Well, I'd probably say things that maybe get me a deal that I would have otherwise shied away from if I had something to lose. What would be the benefits of that? Maybe I'd win more deals, blah, 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 right? And so you keep, the more answers that you come up with on that, the better. Now, you got to do the opposite too. So what's the opposite of $0 in the bank account? Would be unlimited money. And everybody listening to this, oh man, that'd be great. Well, since we know that there's no such thing as a positive without a negative,
the problems to solve.
You got it. So there's unlimited also negatives, drawbacks to having unlimited money, right? I'll get you started with one, is having probably some fake friends that come out of the woodwork that are automatically just chummy with you. What would be the drawbacks of that? Well, you'd have a really tough time discerning who's an actual person that you want to have a relationship with. What would be the drawbacks of that? And so on and so forth.
Get attacked by the woke culture.
Right. And then you want to ask yourself, that's right. So then you want to ask yourself, okay, what are 10 actual specific action items that I can take right now that would minimize the impact or prevent that $0 in the bank account from happening? What are actual specific action items? Not just knock more doors, do better, be happier. Like those aren't action items. Like call Lee, enroll in his shit so that I actually do the thing by tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern is a specific action item.
Yeah.
Right? 10 of those, right? Maybe you need to like, hey, call up Joe so that you make sure that you have a friend's couch to sleep on just in case it does happen. Make sure you got at least one friend that you can chill with so you're not sitting on the street, right? And so when you do this, what you're doing is you're starting to shift your perspective from one that causes, oh shit, going broke is bad, and avoidance, because that which you resist persists. So if you're trying to avoid something, the harder you avoid it, the more it's going to come to you. But now if you're prepared for it and be like, you know what, honestly, it'd be quite a relief to have $0 in the bank account. I'd have no liability. Like there's literally, like I got no pressure on me anymore, right? And so now you start to begin, when you really go through and do the act, like do it actually. Just logically understanding this won't fucking work. So do it. All right. So when you...
It's funny because like I talk to my clients and a lot of times with roofers, there's a cost of goods. You got to buy roofing material and labor. And there's a certain, what I know a lot of times people don't talk about is you can grow as you are profitable, as you collect money, but based on your profitability, there's limits to how fast you can grow without bringing in excess capital and contracting. And, for me, this year, big hurricane happens and I look at an opportunity to double my company size and to open up multiple locations. And then instantly, these big jobs that we sell that are going to make us millions of dollars require me to put all the money up to do the jobs right now.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I can have them without having to compete for price right now is because no one else has the resources to do it or the money to do it.
Sure.
It's not even a sales deal. It's just show up, you got the material and money to do it, get started. And so my guys are like, Lee, I don't know if I can afford it. I can remember this guy, he's saying he had a couple $100,000 in the bank and he had bills coming in. He didn't know if he could afford it. And I'm like, man, look, you know, whenever this opportunity happened to me, I have so much faith in the system, so much faith in what we do that when an opportunity like that comes, you know, we're not afraid of any circumstance or consequence.
Right.
And, you know, meaning I'm a huge organization with hundreds of people, and yet I'm willing to go all in. Why aren't you? And that's the difference between the highest level entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
People don't realize what they have to risk to get it.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that risk?
So, I mean, ultimately, I've always been a guy who kind of went against the grain and wasn't afraid to, like, I was the kid who raised his hand in school in 5th grade and said, when the fuck am I going to use this?
Nice.
Okay. And I got kicked out of many a class.
Me too. I got kicked out of 5th grade too.
Yeah.
I know
Nice.
shit. I
Nice.
seriously got
Points.
Changed
I
teachers.
knew I liked you.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the hat and the beard and the...
No, and the bald head.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Brother,
Yeah,
brother,
perfect.
Exactly.
No, I mean, so ultimately, like, it's calculated. You have to be, for me, like, as long as I'm calculated and I know that, like, one of my mentors, Keith Cunningham, I don't know if you ever heard of Keith or worked with Keith, you know, he asked the question, what's the upside, what's the downside, and can I live with the downside? And so if you can live with the downside, cool, go for it. Very rarely, and like in the very beginning when you have nothing to lose, like, sometimes you got to throw Hail Marys and do whatever you got to do. But very quickly thereafter, once you have any kind of traction, you got to start being relatively calculated, and you can't just do dumb shit. Like financial IQ, nobody has a good financial IQ. And so people don't know how to evaluate a risk. So, but once you understand something, it's less scary, right? So if you understand risk, if you understand finances, if you understand money, it becomes less scary because now you can draw the line somewhere as to what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. So ultimately, for me, the more I understand something, the more I know, like, well, I could do that and it might work, but also
the same series
I'm
of
not.
questions when I'm asking a guy who's doing door to door.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys do that. And I'm trying to frame them to understand that the most dependable and consistent way to build wealth is advertising.
Yeah.
Because you can control it.
Right.
And I ask them, you know, so here are the stats. You know, it costs $150 a lead. We get 25% closing rate. So here on average is 20 different companies that we've closed jobs for $600 per roof. How many roofs would you purchase for $600?
Yeah.
What do they all say?
Yeah.
As many as fucking possible.
As many as possible.
So you're telling me you would go broke purchasing roofs for $600? Yes. So you're telling me you would borrow money to purchase roof for $600?
Yeah.
Yes. So you would go $10 million in debt purchasing roofs for $600? Absolutely.
Yeah. So my question for you, like on the basis of that question, your guys all have LLCs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Do you do business credit type shit?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that you're...
No, that's usually what we do. Is we tell them, hey, look,
stack a bunch of business credit.
If you want to operate like Warren Buffett, then let me show you these proven funnels, these proven case studies. Here are the results. Here are, after 20,000 leads, the statistics, 3 million spent.
Right.
So, yeah, and then a lot of times they just, if they have a 650 credit score, better get funding from one of our blue collar lenders. So
yeah, and when you can get up to, if you have a good credit score and like just reasonable, you can get up to 50, 100 grand and just 0% credit cards.
Yeah,
like honestly, that was a game changer for me to learn because now like I don't pay for shit. I just like put it down, and like even still to this day, like I pay it off now at this point, but like 18 months, like if you can't fucking turn $50,000 into at least $50,000 in 18 months, like you shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
Now, a lot of times this guys struggle with a fear. One of the biggest fears is they know they want to be social sales kings. They know that they want to tell their story. They know they want to create leads with video, but they don't make time for it. They're afraid to do it. They second guess it. They don't want to think that they a lot of times they don't want to look braggadocious or whatever. For one, the question is, what do you think about business owners that don't do this stuff over the next 5 years with technology, digital marketing, video stuff? And then for two, how do you think that you help them address that real issue where they just have to get it done? And how do you just help those guys get it done?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, so it's back to what we were talking about on like the fear of going broke. Like, so if you're afraid of going on video, afraid of advertising, whatever, it's the same benefits, drawbacks to those items. Okay. So if you actually go through that, like, what are you afraid of happening specifically on video?
People that you are friends with saying you look stupid.
Right. So let's just take that one, for example, right? You're afraid of them actually, like, just saying you look stupid. Are they actually, you're picturing them having a phone call with you saying, hey, Lee, just want to let you know I think you look stupid. Click. Or like, hey, sending you a text message like, hey, Lee, just FYI, I saw your bullshit ad and I think you look like a fucking idiot. Like, is that what you're specifically picturing? Or you, like, most of it's just this vague picture of I don't fucking know, so I'm going to do nothing. When you actually start to get clear and specific on what is it you're actually, that's why we defined going broke as $0 in the bank account. Yeah. Like if you looked at your phone and it said fucking zero, that would be what you're technically afraid of.
Right.
And then when you stack benefits of that happening and drawbacks of the opposite happening, now you're like, well, both of them have benefits and drawbacks. So now all of a sudden, like that math equation, they cancel out and you're like, I kind of have some freedom to operate now. Because you're now, instead of being effect to these perspectives, you're cause over the perspectives.
And this is why I love what Myron Gold says about the subject. It's like, hey, what happens in the future hasn't happened. So why not tell yourself a story that works for you? Are the stories you're telling working for you?
Exactly.
Because both stories are a lie.
Right.
If it's positive and everything's going to go great and it's going to go to plan, it hadn't happened.
So
it's a lie.
Here's the thing. What the disconnect for me was, because that's pretty standard. Like any, that's like who hasn't said that?
Correct.
Tell yourself a new story, right? The problem is this is where we're going back to our affirmations, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you're sitting there saying, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm rich, and you're fucking not, all you're doing is lying to yourself with this new story. And now all of a sudden you have like, you're taking a shot of guilt and resentment to yourself because you know you're sitting in there in the mirror, look like an idiot, lying to yourself, or so you perceive, right? So instead of just coming up with a new story and trying to slap it on top of the old one, you have to actually logically believe the new story. You can't just tell yourself a new story, right? You can't just tell yourself to buy the roof if you don't believe intrinsically that it's the right thing to do as a client. And that's why you and all you guys as salespeople need to ask the right questions to get them to logically come to their own conclusion that buying the roof's the right thing to do.
Man.
So the same goes with selling yourself on a new perspective that says, I don't give a fuck what Aunt May thinks about my advertising. Mm-hmm. Right? So you can't just say, I don't care what they think. I don't care what they think. I don't care what they think. Because you fucking care what they think.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't just add a new story. You have to come to the new conclusion of the new story logically with a bit of a logic train. You can't just open a sales call and say, hey, buy. Right? You have to lead them through a logic process. So where they're like, buying's a good idea. Right? So the same goes with shifting your own perspectives. And this is where I think, and I did it all. This is where just tell yourself a new story and write it down really hard and say it hard and yell it like a motherfucker. Like, if that works for you, great. But if you're still watching this right now, probably it hasn't. And you felt like an idiot trying to do that like I did. So if you ask yourself the right questions in the right order, you'll come up with a new story that makes actual, real, legitimate sense to you, not because you sat there and visualized it or meditated on it or breathed on it, but because you just asked the right logical questions in the right logical order and came to a new, genuine, authentic conclusion, and you feel the new story, not just trying to fake it till you make it with a new fucking story. It's a small detail, but instead of jumping from A to B, we got to go through the actual sequential steps from A to B instead of just jumping here and trying to force ourselves to B. And so when you ask yourselves the right questions of, okay, what am I actually really afraid of? Is it Aunt May going, hey, you're a fucking idiot? Okay, cool. Let's assume that. What would be the benefits of that? They are there because we know, based on these universal principles that literally hold physical matter together. If you want to go to a quantum physics level, it's literally these polar opposites is what holds the physical universe together. Okay? It's what balances out these things so they're not collapsing in and on themselves. Okay? So when you understand that that is the structure of the physical universe, there's literally nothing that exists that doesn't have equal amounts of benefits and drawbacks to it. And so when you go through and consciously uncover them deliberately, not reactively, like everybody's just sitting there going reactive to things like, oh no, this, or oh no, that, or reactive to their own, like you were saying, the aggressive punch people in the mouth method, right? That's a new sort of reactivity. So there's two ways to get a result, consciously or reactively. Most personal development, if you want to call it that, teaches to install a whole bunch of pain with being broke and a whole bunch of pleasure with being rich. And if you install them hard enough, you'll get yourself moving from broke to rich. That's cool, but that's also how they get cattle to move. And I don't know if anybody watching this or listening to this right now is a cow. If you are, comment below. Yeah, I don't think you have an audience of cows. You have an audience of infinite spiritual beings that have forgotten who they actually are, that have gotten themselves stuck in the perspective of pain and pleasure loops. I don't have grind myself into this, I gotta do this because of this. Well, because if you don't, that's the same thing that gets people investing their whole life savings into Dogecoin and losing their fucking life savings. That's the same thing that gets people get caught in a downward spiral of depression. And the same thing that gets people going roller coastering back and forth from I feel really great to really shitty, feel really great to really shitty on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year, decade-to-decade basis. So you have this huge, massive swings. And that's where I'm sure you've experienced it along the way as well, and it's kind of flattened itself out. You have like super awesome day, super shitty day, super awesome week, super shitty week, super awesome month, super shitty month. And your emotions and income are correlated. That's why Warren Buffett says if you can't control your emotions, you can't, or if you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage money. Well, you have to be able to manage your emotions. There's a direct correlation with how you feel and your outlook and your income. And so if you're stuck in this reactive loop of positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, well, you're just going to be stuck there. And so what happens is most of these people, most of you guys listening to this, if you're stuck in this fear loop, if you're stuck in this doubt loop, it's over here overly on this negative side, and you're thinking I need to balance it out or like go over, I should only see positive sides. I'm saying they're both equal. And once you realize that, now you can, like that whole thing, that whole game goes away. And when that game goes away, now you can choose things based on intention. Not reactive cattle prodding.
Yeah. So I had a lot of these issues, and I still do. And the ball of mess that my mind was in kind of really, we had a lot of success in the business that caused sort of these success problems. And this was before I had a lot of the CEO skills of a very large organization. You know, when we were talking at Jeremy's deal, talking about the core values, the mission statement, the important of like not having a North Pole where we're going and not having it broke down into goals for all key members and having a clear organizational chart. But, you know, the idea is I got everybody fighting. I'm coaching other contractors. A lot of people in my own company are calling me a hypocrite. And I get this weird reaction, and it's happening a lot. And I got to take it on the chin and say, what the fuck are you, what role are you playing? This, you're manifesting this, Lee. What's going on? You have to make a change. You have to become a completely different person. And so, you know, I've played this out publicly, this journey, just kind of sharing along the way. And over the last 2 years, I've found a lot more happiness. And I found it by taking the ego out of it. Now, sometimes I got to feed the beast. And the beast, you know, when I say feed the beast, what I mean by that is I have to feed my vision And I have to feed the belief that I can achieve the vision, and I have to feed the feelings that I'm going to get in the championship moments, even in those tough times. So it's not, there's a quote by Grant. He's like, you should be able to set yourself on fire. You should be able to get control of your breath, get control of your mind. I have a little happy place meditation where I'm in a boat with Jesus, and I've got a little protective ball where I can see my thoughts going by. And, a lot of times, this gives me to my homeostasis where I'm in my not too hype, not too crazy, just like in that happy place. And I try to make that sailboat go with the wind and ride the waves. It's literally just a meditation I think of. But beyond that, success is about being able to, if we're creating our future, being able to say, okay, 10 years from now, I want to fill up stadiums. I want to be the Chick-fil-A of roofing. I want to create thousands of blue-collar millionaires and get more people into the business and facilitate their success and literally be the guy that everyone knows got souls into roofing where people were, lives changed and they built communities and their lives were changed. And when I think about, what my life's going to look like, I'm trying to give myself those good feelings. Now, before I would try to do the meditations, I would always kind of get in my own way. I found beating the shit out of myself physically is something that is almost a prerequisite for me. Intense physical workout, specifically like the Calm app and Headspace for me, just learning meditation. But now, of course, just listening to the meditation little tracks on the music. But dude, I find myself, I'm like a hip hop head. What kind of music you listen to?
I listen to everything.
Okay. Well, I've had to stop listening to so much rap music because it's so negative. The beat sounds good, but the vibe of what they're saying is not.
Sure.
And I used to feed off of kind of like that masculinity energy that comes with what Drake calls it, toxic masculinity.
Okay.
I definitely have fed myself, and that's sort of the armor. But the one thing about it is that I guess what I'm trying to say is without meditation, without martial arts, without here recently, man, I had a guy named Clyde, this guy that worked for me. He was a student, and he passed away. And the relationship that what he taught me, I had a realization this week that, he taught me something that I'm so grateful for, that there is an afterlife. Not that I didn't have that thought that there was or wasn't one, but there was proof. And when he passed away, he tragically passed away on accident because of a drug overdose. And he was one of these dynamic human beings that just had this light. And his business went from 500,000 to 5 million, and then it went to 10 million, and they're still going even without him.
Wow.
And he had sold his part of his business, and when he sold his business, he kind of got idle hands and he relapsed after 2 years of being sober. And I guess he got in his ego, he got into his success, he had a bunch of stress on him. And sometimes when a guy has a bunch of power to manifest good things, like you said, there's an opposite to that. And we also, once we start getting our minds on the wrong thing, can kill ourselves.
Yep.
My uncle died from suicide. He was also a mentor of mine that had a $100 million roofing business. And, I saw what happened when idle hands caused him to kind of self-deteriorate.
Yep.
So whether it's working out hard or being a workaholic, moving towards a goal is one thing that helps me stay out of the negativity. But recently I've had more luck by doing less, with more martial arts, more meditation, more positive visualization. And, the one thing I can say is things seem to be moving in my business better. I'm holding my team accountable better. I've dealt with a lot of adversity that used to really throw me off, and I can't take credit for it. it's all God. It's all the higher power. It's all stuff like we're talking about, hearing it from other people and then implementing it. But, you know, this is when I had my major breakthrough in the last 2 years. It's not these big years that you've seen on the internet. We've made a lot of money, but it's this exponential wealth creation has happened like in the last 2 years, even though we've been doing it for 17 years. And I guess, I don't know, what I was talking about with Clyde was me helping other roofers is also how I help get out of my own ego. They're supposed to be my competitors, but I take my time to coach them, and it's helped me develop a good system. Now, Clyde, he showed me that the relationships that I make with contractors last beyond death. Because when at his funeral, I actually was scared to go. And I didn't. It was COVID, and I will never miss a friend's funeral. But essentially, they took pictures, and everybody took pictures around a bonfire to take pictures of his spirit. And only his mom's pictures captured the orbs. But there's about 6 photos, and I'll show you the photos, and it shows his spirit, and it gave you goosebumps. But basically, Clyde's mom started a roofing company a year later after he died recently. And, you know, I was doing a meditation in my hot tub, and she was going to be doing this like live event. We did this survivor course, and I literally felt his presence. And I felt him reach and touch me, and I knew that he was, and then right when his hand touched my hand, a gecko jumped on my hand. And it literally made me start tearing up, crying in the hot tub. Because, A, I realized that his spirit was still alive. B, that I was still connected. And then when I called his mom and talked to her about this, she sent me all these photos. And it just reminds me why I have a higher purpose. You know, I want to give back. I want to help roofers that struggle, contractors that struggle. They die from drug addiction. They die from suicide. They kill themselves. Yeah. So obviously, what do you have as far as to really shake people that are dangerous enough to kill themselves? What do you do to kind of prevent that from happening? And you know, what do you have to think about? You know, what our energy goes after we die?
Yeah, great question, man. And I appreciate you sharing all that. You and I are no wonder we gravitated towards one another. We're from the same home planet, wherever that may be.
Right.
So ultimately, in a lot of the work that I've done, and from what I also understand and things that I've facilitated beyond just the people like that I've worked with on in my Bulletproof Entrepreneur program, I've been training some stuff that goes, and one of the books that, have you ever read the book Many Lives, Many Masters?
Nope.
So, yeah. So ultimately, and you study enough history and philosophy, and I have a lot of firsthand personal experience of past life understanding and so on, and also helping others. I'm trained in facilitating some past life remedy shit, which I don't do with my program, but that's part of the work that I did with this gentleman that I worked with. And so having a enormous amount of reality on that is so much so to where I went through certain processes.
Saying past life means you believe in reincarnation.
Right. And the moment for me was, so I went through, without getting into too much detail, I thought it was bullshit at first, but I was like, hey, all the other stuff that I've gone through with this dude that I worked, the Yoda dude that I worked with, like, it had so much merit that I was just like, I was going through some of the things that he was taking me through, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just making this up. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm spewing things that I'm seeing, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm making it up, but it like seems so real and vivid. Then I went home this one particular day, and I started Googling some of the information that I was recalling, specifically from Roman Empire times, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
And locations, dates, people of significant events, I was right. Never had studied that shit. Like, just fuck. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. I want to know more about what the fuck just happened. And so over time...
Have you done a genealogy report and done the...
Well, I mean, genealogy...
Family tree, like 23andMe, and then go back on your family tree, and then...
The family tree... So there's a genetic tree, and then there's a spiritual tree. Okay. So I have much more reality on the spiritual tree than... The genetic entity is its own thing. It's I don't there's significance to it, but not as much significance to where like I'm not of the belief that, you know, like fear is genetic. Yeah. Like so but so ultimately, like my personal reality, and again, what's true for you is true.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an open discussion.
But my personal reality is I very much have an incredible I've had, in fact, most of my experience is out of body, to be honest with you. Like right now, I'm very much not. And technically, if you look at perception, like we're both filling up this whole room right now.
Right.
Right. If we left this room, what's his name again? Nick. Nick would, regardless of our talking, he would feel something leave the room. Yeah. Right. Even if he had his eyes closed. Yeah. Right? So what is that? Well, the more like that's a real fucking thing. Yeah. And it's what you do with it's what you do with the transference of energy and certainty or confidence to prospects or your audience or your students. You're empowering them until they remember that that's them too. Mm-hmm. And ultimately that's all that learning is remembering. Mm-hmm. And so when you learn new shit and you have realizations, remember, and that's what you're doing. You're remembering again, right? So you're becoming a member again. You've already been one. You've forgotten that you were one, and you're playing this. Everything is, by definition, this whole physical universe is a game.
I'm telling you, dude. They did, you know, the whole stuff about Joe Rogan and finding the 20,000-year-old skeletons in North America, and us really not knowing the time and how old we are, and the Sumerians.
And when you actually study real history, not what's in the history books.
Well, Sumeria, they believe that aliens came down and impregnated them, and that, you know, we really are human beings that were, you know, just potentially part alien.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. You know, all I know is I there's a book called The Four Agreements.
Yep.
It talks about how when man made language, that symbols cannot define spirituality or truth because it's manly, it's language. And
again, studying the physical universe to explain spiritual universe phenomena.
As soon as we humans started to do that, then essentially, you know, we started to create, you know, to some extent, discord in the force. And
so on that, so this is what I was saying, everything in the physical universe is a game by definition. So you have a game requires a goal, boundaries, obstacles, and rules. So for example, what's your favorite sport? Boxing, right? We'll take boxing.
Yeah.
And how many rounds is a standard boxing match again?
Say 12 rounds.
12 rounds, right?
3 rounds.
So imagine that you had to box an entire 12 rounds against an infant. But you had to do the whole 12 rounds. How much fun would that be?
No fun.
No fun at all. Why?
Because there's no challenge.
Because there's no challenge. So in order for us to be interested in something, the whole reason that the physical universe exists is for us to demonstrate our powers.
Yeah, while I was posting that Instagram post, you were sitting here, it says, great men cannot be made without resistance, and all sickness comes from an idle mind and body.
There you go. And so that is exactly, that's a microcosm definition of the macro game that's occurring. So everybody here, everybody watching this, you're trying, too much resistance. I shouldn't have resistance. I don't want resistance. I want things to be easy. Well, if resistance disappeared, then the goal would also have to disappear, because resistance towards what? Resistance only shows up when you have a goal. If you have no goal, there's no resistance. Aside from resistance.
It's fucking crazy. My visualization, I just got goosebumps with I'm talking with Jesus in a boat. It's a sailboat. Every time I try to make it a motorboat, it doesn't ever work, because the visualization is how can I be one with the boat and Jesus and go with the wind? And how can I create the whole environment in my mind to have a fun ride with a lot of wind and a lot of ride up and down the waves, but not torrential, not going down 30-foot waves.
Sure.
And so this, when you talk about meditation and you don't do it a whole lot, you should do more, because all you're trying to do is keep your mind from doing nothing. You just try to do nothing. And the only way I can keep myself from doing nothing is to play a game in my brain where I'm riding a sailboat with Jesus. But without resistance, that boat don't go nowhere. And a lot of times it's frustrating to get in my head and do a meditation and the boat's not moving. And the water's still. And I can't keep attention to the meditation because it's not interesting. But if I'm in that mood, like I'll be riding literally in my boat and I'll literally be going out into the sea. And maybe this is why, for me, when my cell phone goes off, when I'm in my boat, and we should probably set up a fishing trip, and I'll show you what I mean. But I go 40 miles offshore, we go grouper fishing. Dude, as soon as I start getting in 6, 8, 9 miles offshore, boom, I get into that, like, I'm walking on water type, close my eyes, and I'm living in that visualization to some extent. And at that moment, it's very easy to think about a lot of wind and a lot of movement. And so it's funny. It's like just recently with the fear and knowing I was taking the blood, I was breathing, I was having the visualization, and it's funny how quickly, if you're conscious of it, if you're aware of it. I mean, I said a prayer before. I said, I know this is going to be it's so stupid to talk about this, but essentially it's funny because literally my mind and the fear of it took control of my whole body, and it is an out-of-body experience. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. But just a reminder for me, because I've been in this invincible mode, because I've been too physical with the martial arts, too much about wanting to beat people up, and too much about using that as armor, because I don't want these evil forces that come. I want them to be scared of me. But that's not how it works. It just attracts more evil forces.
That which you resist persists.
Yeah. So I think it's a crazy balance. What's your thoughts on like executives and microdosing and doing mushrooms?
Executives?
Or just like business people.
Executives and microdosing. You mean you're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of a thing. There's a billion Showtimes. I was watching one of the episodes. They're on a ayahuasca trip. Yeah, and they're fucking sweating and all kinds of shit. Joe Rogan's always talking about it. Mike Tyson's talking about it. Yeah. Of course, when I grew up, it's not like I didn't take mushrooms, and had some bad trips. Kind of put them in the same category as cocaine or ecstasy. Didn't think about it as a natural drug. Put it on the shelves for 10 years, but 10 years later took a trip. Yeah. And it was very helpful for me in my ego. But I personally, so the work that I've done, I experienced pretty much. I've never done mushrooms or anything like that. But what the explanation of that experience is, and having studied it plenty and heard accounts and so on and so forth, all of that is possible without doing that. And really only after the fact, once I really started to understand, like, with the past life and out of body shit and like just seeing I know it's all of that. Once I started to understand more and more, and even still to this day, like you and I are both still learning shit. I'm learning shit from you and whatever. Like the more I'm understanding what I've been through, and like a lot of that is honestly pretty much the same experience, just without the external thing with the body. No, psilocybin is a poison in your stomach, but it's been used for about 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 years. Who knows?
So ultimately, like
I think I was a shaman in another life.
Yeah, you've been everything.
Yeah, a shaman, a warrior.
Yeah,
definitely a killer.
Yeah, we all have been. And that's why when things happen in present time and we see them, there's always a part of us that's reminded that that's a part of us and what we've experienced. And that's actually when you, at least this is again, from my personal experience and my belief, like when you see somebody like, you know, get killed, for example, and whether even if it's
so
like
fucking pissed about this Travis Scott thing. Oh my God, dude. What do you think about that?
That's a whole nother podcast that we need to do. Not just that, but that
Illuminati.
whole, right, all of that. But it's interesting when you study it. Like the more, like,
what do you think about that much demonic energy?
It has to be there.
It's controlling my mind. How many minds is it controlling?
Well, so it has to be there.
It's
Remember the two opposite poles.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be there. It's It's one of the opposite poles. Yeah. Right. So it literally has to be there to balance out its extreme opposite.
Yeah.
So once you understand that, instead of trying to say, well, this should go away. Well, this goes away.
Evil.
It's necessary. It's literally the positive, negative charges that hold the physical universe together. The physical universe, matter, energy, space, and time.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have equal positives and negatives.
They came up with a virus to avoid World War III?
Again, that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother which we should do, by the way.
Yeah, we could do a conspiracy theory.
We should do. We should
get my YouTube banned.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, ultimately, you know, from me, like and again, what works for you works for you. Like I'm never one to say like, oh, you shouldn't do that or you should do this. I don't think you should or shouldn't do shit. Mm-hmm. If what's working for you works, keep fucking doing it, please, by all means. Right. Like, so I'm just one that's like, well, to the degree that I need something or need not to have something is the degree that I'll say vulnerable.
I'll tell you
so if I get something taken away from me, let's say I needed to have a green drink every day. As long as I had a green drink every day, the day was good. If I didn't fucking have it, it was a complete fucking nightmare. Well, now my master is a green drink. Mm-hmm. It's more powerful than me. I'm giving my power to a fucking celery strained fucking thing. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not giving my power to anything other than myself. Mm-hmm. And whether that's true or not, if I look at it that way, you can take my shit away from me. Go for it.
Yeah.
Fuck with me. Try. Mm-hmm. You can't. So to the degree that you have things that you need or need to avoid or have to have or have to not have, that's fine. If it works and they're sustainable and whatever and you're happy, like, go fine, do it. For me, though, like in the bulletproof entrepreneur, to the degree that how bulletproof am I if it's like, well, if I'm not wearing a hat because I'm fucking bald, to the degree that I'm I'm the bulletproof entrepreneur, but I have to fucking wear a hat. You know, like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, come on. So to me, I'm just like, all right, fine, fuck with me. Strip me naked, make fun of me. I don't care. Find something to fuck with me on. Dig up dirt on me. Throw it in my face. I'll throw it. Like, you know, remember at the end of, you're a Detroit guy, end of 8 Mile, right?
Yeah.
He what does he do?
He makes fun of himself with all the shit.
Makes fun of himself with all the shit. And what does the other guy have to shoot? Nothing. Right? So if you own your shit and you're able to confront anything, would be willing to experience anything, nobody can fuck with you. And if nobody can fuck with you, you're the ultimate dangerous guy. I'd rather be dangerous to my environment than have my environment be dangerous to me.
Fuck yeah. And I'd rather be lucky than good. And you're lucky to watch this motherfucking podcast. You need to get notifications, subscribe. Go see this man at bulletproofontrepreneur.co. How can they find you on Instagram and YouTube?
Yeah, it's at bulletproof.john.
Nice.
Just follow me there. And by the way, if you DM me the word bulletproof, we have about 25 trainings on how to get rid of fear, doubt, frustration, procrastination, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, get your focus up, motivation up, you name it. We got trainings on it. So go on Instagram, bulletproof.john, DM me the word bulletproof, and I'll send you those trainings.
Dude, we're going to be working together. We're going to be doing a lot more shit. I want you speaking at my next event.
Dope. Love it.
Very excited to have you here, and we'll have you back. It's a great talk.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me, Lee.